I hope you have deep pockets, because otherwise the financial setback that you'll experience running all of these supplements together simultaneously will be crazy. It'll be deleterious. It'll be crippling. It'll be divorce worthy. So make sure you hide it from your significant other if you're going to be that crazy, because otherwise they're going to run away faster than your ability to catch up with them, even running all of these over-the-counter supplements together at the same time at the maximum dosages. Because when they hear about it and part 2 drops, they'll just take some EPO and mildronate and they're out the door, gone forever. Vigorous Steve here with the optimized endurance, improved stamina, quicker than the Flash or faster than Quicksilver, whoever you prefer, deep dive video series. This is part 1 of a multitude of parts. I'm not exactly sure how many parts this video series is going to contain, because there's so much material that I had to go through. I did most of the preparation already. But in this video, we're just going to focus on the over-the-counter supplements, which are full NADI approved. All of these are not on the prohibited list of 2023, right, of the World Anti-Doping Agency and USADA. But, you know, times change, so please make sure you do your due diligence researching, because whatever is full NADI approved this year might not be full NADI approved next year, because WADA are a bunch of assholes. So keep that in mind. So in this video, we'll just discuss the supplements. But Steve, what about the performance-enhancing drugs? I want to know about the drugs. I want to inject something. Be patient. We'll get to that in part 2. Subscribe now so you don't miss it. It will drop in about a week or 10 days, depending on how much material I need to go through to finalize my notes. And then we'll go all in on all PEDs that are known to improve your overall stamina, endurance, and everything else that you need to win the race as fast as possible. For now, just over-the-counter supplements. But before we get into it, please like the video, leave a comment for the algorithm, and consider subscribing if you haven't already. If you want to vote for upcoming deep dives like this one, the Optimized Endurance Stack, and I believe that the Optimized Entrepreneurial Stack, discussing all kinds of nootropics and testosterone replacement therapy and everything else that will take your business to the next level, is now in the lead. So if you want to vote for something else, join the YouTube or Patreon memberships. You can also join the Inquisitor level, so you can join the weekly Vigorous Q&A, which is always on Saturday, and get your questions answered privately with a select few other members, right? So if you want to support the channel, that's the way to do it. Let's get started with optimizing our testosterone levels. Yes, surprisingly, you don't need exogenous testosterone to optimize your testosterone levels. So the golden rule here is sleep according to your circadian rhythm. Like I mentioned 1,000 times before, eat highly nutritious foods, which we'll get into a little bit later. Remove all of the stressors from your life. There are supplements to reduce stress, but still, it's good to remove all of the stressors from your life to improve your overall testosterone production. You can take supplements like KSM-66 ashwagandha root extract, Tongkat Ali for dosha agrestis, boron, vitamin C, which we'll get into, vitamin D3, vitamin E with mixed tocopherols and tocotrienols, magnesium bisglycinate, glycinate or citrate. We'll get into that as well. Zinc bisglycinate, glycinate, citrate or picolinate, selenium, taurine. We're also going to discuss L-carnitine, L-tartrate. Don't worry, we'll get to that. And of course, I've got several videos on this YouTube channel. I'll link some of them at the end of this video on how to optimize your testosterone and go a little bit more in depth with these over-the-counter supplements. And if you think this already sounds highly expensive, don't worry, I got a freebie for you. All you need to do is put an ice pack underneath your testicles wrapped in a towel, leave it there for 20 minutes, 3 times per day. And this is known to improve blood flow, similar to how you do ice packs and hot packs on a sore knee to reduce the inflammation and bring new blood to the area. I've been doing this for a long minute now, and it actually works. I got a video about it documenting my personal blood work results using these over-the-counter supplements in that particular practice. Right? Give the channel a search. So yeah, I hope you have deep pockets, because otherwise the financial setback that you'll experience running all of these supplements together simultaneously will be crazy. It'll be deleterious. It'll be crippling. It'll be divorce worthy. So make sure you hide it from your significant other if you're going to be that crazy, because otherwise they're going to run away faster than your ability to catch up with them, even running all of these over-the-counter supplements together at the same time at the maximum dosages. Because when they hear about it and part 2 drops, they'll just take some EPO and mildronate and they're out the door, gone forever. Okay, let's start by optimizing our oxygen carrying capacity using micronutrients. After all, you need nutrients for increased red blood cell production, optimized oxygen delivery, and increased carbon dioxide removal, right, after strenuous endurance exercise. So we're just going to go over the micronutrients first. Don't worry, I'll keep it short. On the screen, I have the daily recommended intake, the estimated average requirement for general population, which doesn't include you, but I felt the need to post it on the screen anyway. And then the tolerable upper intake, which is generally considered to be the maximum amount you can take of these various micronutrients on a daily basis. But sometimes I feel that based on my own recommendation, the intake can be significantly higher. So it's all on the screen right here. Take it into consideration. I'll leave it up to you because, again, some of these micronutrients are ultimately going to come from your diet, right? You don't always have to supplement at the top end of the micronutrient requirement for optimized oxygen carrying capacity. Figure out what micronutrients you get from your foods and then supplement on top, right? It's not rocket science. All you have to do is a little bit of due diligence figuring out what you get from your diet. But to make it easy for you guys, I also included which foods are particularly rich in these micronutrients. So at least it's on the screen also. Let's start with vitamin B9, also known as folate or folic acid. This plays an essential role in the production or maturation of red blood cells. And of course, vitamin B9 is also involved in DNA synthesis and repair. So if you're undergoing a lot of stress during intense endurance exercise, you need the cellular maintenance and growth and DNA synthesis to facilitate everything that includes recovery. So it's a no-brainer to include vitamin B9 in your diet. You can find this in lentils, most beans, asparagus, spinach, and broccoli. And otherwise, you go with a cookie cutter B100 complex formula, which contains 100 micrograms vitamin B9, which should more than cover your basic needs, even though the daily recommended intake for folate is about 400 micrograms, right? But don't worry, guys, you'll be able to reach this easily because most of the carbohydrate sources that we eat to improve our endurance, especially during long distance exercise, like rice, for example, oatmeal, pasta, whatever you prefer that sits well in your stomach during these strenuous long distance races, most of those are quite rich in vitamin B9 by themselves. So a supplemental B100 complex and adequate from your food, you'll be able to reach 400 micrograms per day easily. And keep in mind that vitamin B9 also contributes to energy metabolism, converting carbohydrates into usable energy in the form of ATP. More on that later when we get to the skeletal muscle section. Now, I'm sure most of you guys are familiar with vitamin B12, cobalamin, which is known to improve your appetite if you use an injectable form. But in this video, we're just going to discuss the over-the-counter supplements. Some of the food sources are quite rich in vitamin B12, such as sardines, salmon, tuna, cod, lamb, scallops, shrimp, beef liver specifically, and yogurt. So all of those, if you eat those on a daily basis, you should be able to get 2.4 micrograms of vitamin B12 at least as the daily recommended intake. But if you want to go higher, there's supplements for that in the form of cyanocobalamin, which is a synthetic version of vitamin B12. This form is not found in nature, but it's the most stable and cost-effective compared to natural methylcobalamin, which is found in the food sources I just discussed. If you do this in combination with a B100 complex containing 100 micrograms cyanocobalamin and whatever methylcobalamin you get from your diet, that's more than enough for adequate energy metabolism, where vitamin B12 is included in the metabolism of carbohydrates, fats, and protein, converting them into usable energy in the form of ATP. And again, vitamin B12, like vitamin B9, is necessary for the production and maturation of red blood cells. And keep in mind that vitamin B12 is also involved in the maintenance of the central nervous system, including the production of myelin and protective sheath around the nerves. Of course, optimized neurological function is very important for, let's say, hand-eye coordination, if that's part of the endurance sport, and otherwise total body awareness, allowing you to perform at peak levels throughout the entire moment that you need optimized endurance. Very, very important. So I would say that vitamin B9 and B12 supplementation is already very beneficial to improve your overall oxygen carrying capacity and deal with recovery and overall neurological function, just from those two alone. Then what you also have to look into is iron intake. Now, of course, iron is the main component of hemoglobin within the red blood cells, and the iron actually helps with the oxygen that the red blood cells transport through your blood. So without iron, you will not be, delivering oxygen and removing carbon dioxide efficiently. Again, iron supplementation, I feel it's not really necessary if you eat, the regular foods that are heavy or containing a lot of heme iron. For example, beef liver, bone marrow, mackerel, sardines, chia seeds, flaxseed, albeit that's non-heme iron. as well as lentils, spinach, sesame seeds, olives, and most beans. That's not hema iron. But if you get hema iron from beef and other animal meat sources, your iron absorption, especially if you combine that with vitamin C, is very, very good. And you don't need to go the supplemental route. If you do want to go the supplemental route, I believe that iron ferrous bisglycinate chelate or ferrogel has the highest bioavailability of all iron supplements out there, and also has the least effect on your gastrointestinal tract and isn't known to cause constipation. This is a side effect of iron supplements. So if you go with the ferrogel formula, there's a less likelihood that you get constipated. And otherwise, you can get the desiccated beef liver tablets, which is very old school, but it still works. And that contains a decent amount of hema iron. And it's probably the only supplement out there that actually contains hema iron. So if you don't want to go with beef liver or actual beef, then maybe desiccated beef liver tablets is the way to go to increase your overall iron intake. Now, iron is also involved in the production of ATP to a certain extent, so that's a huge bonus, but it's mostly there to carry oxygen or bind oxygen to the hemoglobin within the red blood cells and deliver that to metabolically active tissues so they can help with ATP synthesis. Right. That's the iron. Vitamin C is also very important. Now, I would say that, for all of its benefits, the antioxidant benefits and, its potent effect on collagen synthesis, I would not go towards the bottom of the recommended intake of, let's say, 90 milligrams vitamin C. That's way too low. I would say anywhere between 2,000 to 5,000 milligrams of vitamin C per day. Highly beneficial. Now, vitamin C is not really known to have a direct effect on overall endurance and energy levels and improved stamina. But again, it mostly helps with iron absorption, particularly non-hema iron, which is found in plant sources. So if you supplement with vitamin C alongside your iron-rich foods, you can ensure that you absorb all of the iron that you're consuming over the day. And again, iron supplementation might not be required at all. And all of the beneficial effects regarding its antioxidant properties or its effect on collagen synthesis, highly beneficial. Because again, if you do a lot of endurance exercise and if it's very straining and you produce a lot of reactive oxygen species, then of course this can cause cell damage or make you look older or even DNA damage. So you need to keep your antioxidant intake substantially high, because whether you train for endurance or for strength or for hypertrophy or just any kinds of physical labor in general, antioxidants need to be in place. And I don't care what the literature says that it blunts the post-exercise stress response. That's just a very small part of the picture. You want to look youthful later on. You want to have all the benefits of antioxidants systemically throughout the day. And if you care about a little bit of post-exercise response, you're probably just not training hard enough. Watch the mitochondrial support stack. I go over all of the antioxidants, which are highly beneficial if you want to improve your overall endurance and increase your mitochondrial function and thus increase your overall ATP production. Right? This is basically a follow-up to the mitochondrial support stack. So watch that video when we're done with this one. If you haven't watched it already, there I go into a lot more depth when it comes to these antioxidants. So vitamin C, a no-brainer, high dosages up to 5,000 milligrams per day. And otherwise, well, vitamin C rich foods includes papaya, bell peppers, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, strawberry, pineapple, oranges, cantaloupe, and cauliflower, which are also quite rich in vitamin B9. An adequate copper intake, which is also an essential trace mineral, is very important for overall synthesis of hemoglobin containing the iron. So you need to have adequate amounts of copper in your diet. Now, most people, based on all the diets that I've written in the past, usually you get about 1 to 2 milligrams from dietary sources. And otherwise, most of the, over-the-counter general multivitamins contain 1 to 2 milligrams of copper. So you probably got that covered. You don't need to start injecting GHK copper just to get your copper intake up. Right? You get it from food or a general multivitamin. Keep in mind that copper just basically helps with iron metabolism, where it contributes to its absorption, transport, and utilization of iron, ultimately resulting in hemoglobin, right? Increasing the oxygen carrying capacity of the red blood cells. So copper contributes indirectly, just like vitamin C contributes indirectly. There's a fun fact here, because copper deficiency might impair iron metabolism and iron deficiency, resulting in low iron content within the hemoglobin. But for individuals who are on performance enhancing drugs and they supplement with zinc heavily, so if you do that testosterone boosting protocol, which I mentioned in the start of the video, with a decent amount of zinc, you might induce copper deficiency, because zinc and copper utilize the same transporters and enzymes. So if you go in a high dose of zinc, you need to supplement copper in. Again, 2 to 5 milligrams is more than enough. But you see in these cases where you get copper deficient, that iron intake shoots up substantially high. And it, again, could be in combination with high vitamin C intake. So you really need to dial this in. If you go with high vitamin C, high zinc, and a decent amount of iron in your diet, you also need to make sure that your copper intake is sufficient to facilitate everything and remain everything in a balance, because otherwise you have very high hematocrit, very high red blood cells, and also very high serum iron levels, inducing all kinds of medical conditions, especially in the liver. So keep that in mind. Don't overdo it. You don't need to megadose all of these micronutrients on top of your diet. Figure out what you get from your diet, and then if needed, you supplement on top. Copper-rich foods includes beef liver, again, sesame seeds, cashew nuts, mushrooms, sunflower seeds, most beans, as well as lentils and walnuts. Oh, and it's also important to mention that copper is a cofactor in various antioxidant enzymes in the body, including superoxide dismutase, abbreviated to SOD. These enzymes help to protect against oxidative stress induced by intense endurance exercise. So again, copper supplementation, or at least adequate intake, a no-brainer. This kind of covers the overall oxygen carrying capacity of the blood. Again, there's a lot of pharmaceutical aids who can take that further, or hyperbaric chambers who can really improve that. But this is the foundation. These micronutrients play a part in overall red blood cell production and its overall oxygen carrying capacity. So without these, it doesn't matter how much PEDs you take, it's not going to be optimal. Keep that in mind. Let's move over to optimizing our cardiac function using caffeine. Yes, you don't need stimulants, you don't need clen, you don't need ephedrine, or some of the other PEDs, which we'll discuss in part 2. Caffeine gets the job done. Now, I'm not going to bore you with all of the benefits of caffeine. I'm sure you guys are all familiar. And caffeine was indeed included in the WADA prohibited list from 1993 to 2002 due to its performance-enhancing effects, but it's now been taken off the prohibited list because, well, you're going to tell your athletes not to go to Starbucks during the race or before the race or in between competitions. I mean, that's asininely insane. So, again, 1 point for the athletes and 1 point less for WADA. Ha! Joke's on you. Okay, you can see all the benefits of caffeine on the screen. I'm not going to bore you. Let's just abbreviate it real quick. Caffeine acts as a central nervous system stimulant, has been shown to increase the breakdown of stored fat as a fuel source during exercise so that it can improve your endurance. Caffeine can reduce the perception of fatigue and pain during exercise, so now you can train longer. And caffeine, being a stimulant after all, has the capacity to improve overall skeletal muscle contraction as well as cardiac muscle contraction. So now you have increased power output systemically, and it does so by increasing calcium release within the muscle cells. And whether that's in skeletal muscle cells or cardiac muscle cells, caffeine helps with contractile capacity. So for me, it's a no-brainer, but most of the athletes that I know that do endurance sports or, max out strength events, they keep the caffeine for the event. They don't take it every day. They only use it for the event because, the body builds up a tolerance to caffeine, as I know, because I take 1 or 2 cups of coffee per day. How many shots that is? Maybe 4 to 8 sometimes. I'm a little bit overdoing it. But again, caffeine has so many, stimulatory nootropic benefits, getting the job done. So for me, for looking for productivity, it's a no-brainer. But if you're after optimized endurance, you might want to abstain from caffeine and only use it between 200 milligrams to 600 milligrams when you actually need it before an important event. So keep that in mind. Don't overdo it because you do build up a significant tolerance to it. And before you know it, you're up to 1,000 milligrams or 1,500 milligrams per day without raising your heart rate after all. All right, moving over to Ubiquinol, which I mentioned extensively on this YouTube channel. I think I was one of the first, or at least I never heard anybody else talk about Ubiquinol in the context of improving one's endurance and overall workout capacity in the gym if you train for strength or hypertrophy. Never heard anybody else talk about it. So here we are again talking about Ubiquinol. I talked about it many years ago. And now that many of you guys have followed my advice, I get it in my inbox almost every single day. Ubiquinol is the GOAT for cardiac function. Now, I mentioned Ubiquinol many times in the mitochondrial support stack. So again, we're going to go over it briefly. I believe that the effective dosages are 100 milligrams Ubiquinol in the morning, 100 milligrams Ubiquinol in the evening, and then between 100 to 400 milligrams Ubiquinol before activity. So that might be between 300 to 600 milligrams Ubiquinol per day. And yes, that's going to set you back financially quite a bit. So again, keep it a secret. Babe, how many Ubiquinol do you run per day? Just one, babe. Just one, right? but secretly you run 6. Right? You still admitted to it, but it's a white lie to keep the relationship going. 600 milligrams per day, that's where the sweet spot is. Man, I can train for hours. The cardiac function that Ubiquinol supports, legendary. So, again, let's go over it briefly. Ubiquinol is involved in the electron transport chain, a process which occurs within the mitochondria and is responsible for generating ATP, adenosine triphosphate. Again, Ubiquinol acts as a very potent antioxidant, helping to neutralize free radicals and protect the cells from oxidative stress, which always happens during strenuous exercise. Ubiquinol has potent benefits on cardiovascular health, where it plays a role in supporting the function of the heart and overall blood vessels. And Ubiquinol is the active form of coenzyme Q10, which is generally touted as a very heart-healthy supplement, but Ubiquinol is considered to be more bioavailable than its oxidized form, Ubiquinone. So keep in mind, if you go with coenzyme Q10, you don't know how much Ubiquinol and Ubiquinone you're actually getting. Now, the body will oxidize part of the Ubiquinol before it's metabolically used, but still, if you go with the non-oxidized version, the Ubiquinol, you have a higher exercise capacity compared to taking regular coenzyme Q10. It's a no-brainer. Stick with Ubiquinol. That's the most studied and also the most potent form when it comes to increasing your endurance or overall strength aspirations. With that, again, Shilajit fulvic acid with each serving of Ubiquinol. So if you take Ubiquinol in the morning, pre-workout, and in the evening, every time you take it, 250 milligrams Shilajit fulvic acid, because the fulvic acid helps with absorption of nutrients, particularly Ubiquinol. That's well studied in the context of positive heart remodeling. And Shilajit fulvic acid has also been suggested to support mitochondrial function. It has a very potent antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effects. And Shilajit is also considered to be an adaptogen. And don't worry, we'll get to all of the adaptogens a little bit later in this part, and especially part 2, that's full with adaptogens. Besides the ashwagandha root extract and the Shilajit fulvic acid, adaptogens are substances that help the body adapt to stress and improve resilience. So again, endurance exercise, especially long distance, that's a ton of stress. And whether that's stress from cortisol or slight amounts of rhabdomyolysis due to excessive amounts of muscle protein breakdown, or increased stress from reactive oxygen species, or increased stress from all this lactic acid, which is now building up, which we also have solutions for. More on that later. Right? Adaptogens help with that tremendously, so it's a no-brainer to add them in. Moving over to PQQ, Pyrroloquinoline Quinone, which now I've said so many times that it rolls off the tongue. Pyrroloquinoline Quinone. Man, impossible to pronounce, but I still got it done. Okay, 20 milligrams upon waking and maybe 20 milligrams before activity. PQQ is a cofactor in several enzymatic reactions, which help with cellular energy production. PQQ has been shown to support mitochondrial biogenesis, where new mitochondria are formed within skeletal muscle or cardiac muscle or other tissues of the body where the mitochondria are present, which is pretty much 99% of the tissues. So PQQ help with that, ultimately contributing to ATP synthesis. PQQ, Pyrroloquinoline Quinone, is also a very potent antioxidant, which, well, you guessed it, also helps to neutralize free radicals and reduce oxidative stress. Now, besides that, PQQ has also several neuroprotective properties, suggesting that brain health and cognitive function might improve, which is always a benefit if you're going for endurance sports, because everybody knows that terrible post-exercise brain fog, which can occur when you train for long hours at a time and you get into that zone and you're just going and going and going. And suddenly you're at the finish line and then you don't have a goal for that day, but you still have to get jobs done. And then in that case, PQQ might be able to help, although I believe that cerebrolysin or something like Semax is a lot more potent than PQQ supplementation. This is something you can look into. Again, the effects that you get from PQQ are going to be very nuanced on top of some of the things that we'll discuss in this video. But still, if you can afford it, if you feel that the evidence is substantial enough for you to invest in 20 to 40 milligrams PQQ per day, especially around the workouts, then feel free to go ahead. You might get some benefit on top of the other stuff which we're discussing. Now, taurine, very cheap, a no-brainer, 5,000 milligrams before activity or 500 to 1,000 milligrams with meals. Let's say between 3,000 to 5,000 milligrams per day, depending on your activity level and your overall muscularity. Again, taurine plays a role in energy metabolism by helping to regulate the utilization of glucose and fatty acids as fuel sources in the production of adenosine triphosphate. So again, a lot of these compounds help with ATP synthesis. That's why I included them in the mitochondrial support stack. And if you want more information about how these compounds, how these supplements contribute to ATP synthesis, please watch that video. It will explain a lot more. It's over an hour in length. Now, where taurine really shines is in its benefits to regulate osmotic pressure, which is the water balance between the intercellular and extracellular space. So if you're turning over a lot of nutrients between the cell itself and the extracellular space where it can end up in the bloodstream or comes from the bloodstream, this is where taurine contributes. So if you want to mitigate your lower back pumps and shin splints, taurine supplementation is the way to go. But if you want to have optimized nutrient delivery, and that includes all of the nutrients, then taurine is pretty much essential. And this way, taurine is also involved in the regulation of electrolyte balance, particularly calcium and magnesium, which of course help with overall muscular contractions, right? Calcium contracts the muscles and magnesium relaxes the muscles. Now, more magnesium a little bit later. You'll get adequate amounts of calcium from your diet. And if you're supplementing with vitamin D3 and vitamin K2, then calcium, transport throughout the body is certainly optimized. I didn't include that in this video, but now that I'm thinking about it, an honorable mention for dietary calcium coming from, a multitude of animal meat sources, or perhaps yogurt or other dairy products, and vitamin D3 supplementation, as well as vitamin K supplementation. I'll link my recommendations down below. More magnesium later. And taurine has been suggested to enhance muscular contractions and reduce muscle damage by acting as a little bit of an antioxidant. It may even help with force production and the efficacy of muscular contractions, but that comes indirectly from its regulatory role in calcium and magnesium absorption between the intercellular and extracellular space. So overall, taurine supplementation can improve performance quite substantially. And since the heart contains a lot of taurine, I think, again, taurine supplementation is a no-brainer. And if you train for endurance, supplement towards the higher end of taurine, let's say 5,000 milligrams per day. And that can either be pre-workouts or split up 1,000 milligrams with meals, or maybe 1,500 milligrams with meals if you only eat 3 meals per day. Moving over to fish oil, which is a very potent anti-inflammatory compound and helps with, a multitude of different things, including insulin sensitivity, lipid management, again, potent anti-inflammatory. There's so many benefits for fish oil. It will be a whole video in itself. So long story short, make sure you stick with pharmaceutical fish oil or a high potency fish oil, which contains between 500 to 800 milligrams EPA and DHA, giving you a total of, let's say, 2,000 to 3,500 milligrams EPA and DHA combined. Feel free to add in a little bit of krill oil, which contains astaxanthin, which is also beneficial, and a phospholipid that helps with overall lipid levels in the body and overall anti-inflammatory benefits. All of this will contribute to overall heart health quite substantially, but where fish oil and krill oil really shine is in its ability to reduce blood viscosity and help to relax the blood vessels, especially in combination with magnesium, which also has this effect. Magnesium and fish oil helps to dilate and relax the blood vessels, improving the viscosity of the blood that passes through them. So if you're maximizing cardiac function with taurine and ubiquinol and PQQ and everything else, then fish oil will allow the blood to flow through all of the arteries at a much greater capacity. So now the oxygen carrying capacity increases, the nutrient delivery increases, the carbon dioxide removal or the lactic acid removal improves as well. And this is particularly important when you increase red blood cell production and your hematocrit goes up. You don't want your blood to turn into sludge. So when you're using EPO or anadrol or boldenone or primobolan or anything else that's highly erythropoietic, like the hyperbaric chambers, for example, you need omega-3 to improve your viscosity of the blood. You don't want sludge. You just want regular water full with oxygen and full with micronutrients. And that way, your endurance is sustained and you don't get a blood clot and a heart attack while you're performing a race, right? Omega-3, just put it in there. It's cheap and very, very effective. And it brings us to magnesium. And I mentioned it several times earlier in this video already. Magnesium contributes to hundreds of different biological processes in the body, one of which is the production and utilization of adenosine triphosphate, ATP. Yet again, so if you want optimized energy production, magnesium has to be in the picture. Magnesium plays a role in muscular contractions and relaxation, and it does so in its effects by alternating with calcium, like I mentioned before. Magnesium is involved in maintaining a regular heartbeat, and it helps to regulate blood pressure by dilating the blood vessels. So magnesium has to be in there. Dosages can go up to 2,000 milligrams per day from magnesium, bisglycinate, glycinate, or citrate. At least supplement with, let's say, 420 milligrams per day. That's only 2 tablets of a 200 milligram formula. But I go with 200 milligrams with each meal. So I get about 1,000 milligrams of magnesium from dietary sources, and then another 1,000 milligrams of magnesium from supplemental sources. Now, magnesium-rich foods are pumpkin seeds, sesame seeds, sunflower seeds, flax seeds, spinach, black beans, quinoa, cashew nuts, and beet greens. But if you go through, one of these applications to figure out what your micronutrient intake on the diet that you're currently following, you'll see that you get anywhere between 400 to 1,000 milligrams magnesium if you eat the generally recommended healthy foods for optimized endurance and overall strength. So it's quite easy to get adequate amount of magnesium from your diet, but I would still recommend you supplement it in because you're burning through your magnesium quite rapidly if you're training for endurance or overall strength. And then while we're on the subject of cardiovascular health and overall blood pressure support, look into Carditone, 1 capsule per day upon waking. I don't see a reason why you would want to take 2 capsules of Carditone. 1 capsule gets the job done to regulate your blood pressure, and indirectly, this might contribute to an improved endurance. Again, if you're doing everything right, it's probably not necessary. But if you're taking some pharmaceutical aids and for whatever reason, you don't want to go the medicinal route, you're taking PEDs, but you don't want to take ancillaries, then look into Carditone. Carditone is a dietary supplement which typically contains a blend of various herbal extracts and minerals, including Rauwolfia, serpentina, rose powder extract, Bohavia diffusa, and magnesium. And some of the more expensive formulas might contain additional herbal extracts which might help with overall cardiovascular health. Again, research the product packaging because a lot of them are proprietary blends and they don't list how many milligrams of each of these extracts it actually contains. So if you see a breakdown, each herbal extract has a milligram dose behind it. That's the one you want to go with. I'll link my favorite brand down below. It's not really required to improve overall endurance. But again, if you suffer from a little bit of blood pressure issues for whatever reason, or you train in a super hot climate and your electrolyte intake has to be substantial, increasing your blood volume, you have to take a lot of sodium because you sweat buckets and otherwise you're cramping on the side of the pavement, not being able to finish the race. And in that case, Carditone is beneficial to improve the elasticity of your blood vessels further and help to keep your blood pressure in range when you're eating a ton of sodium and drinking a lot of water just to be able to cope with the heat. And then there's 2 other extracts which I want to highlight, albeit that they're not as effective as Carditone or some of the other extracts, which I mentioned earlier in this video regarding optimizing of cardiac function. One of them is hawthorn berry extract. Dosages range between 300 milligrams to 1,200 milligrams daily, which ideally you split up over a multitude of servings. Hawthorn berry extract supports cardiovascular health by improving blood flow and reduces blood pressure. And it contains several flavonoids, including oligomeric proanthocyanins and other compounds which are said to have antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effects. So this might be a nice addition on top of your Carditone, albeit that I believe that some of the Carditone formulas actually already contain hawthorn berry extract. And there's garlic extract between 600 to 1,200 milligrams per day. Again, split up the dose. Some of the versions are not able to raise your body odor. So, do your due diligence researching. Some of them might make you smell a little bit garlicky, and that might be beneficial for you to improve your endurance, but not for everybody else in the race, unless you, that's the strategy. And especially if you're in the front of the race and you're on copious amounts of garlic extract, everybody behind you is miserable. Again, strategy plays a key. Whatever it takes to win, garlic extract might be the one to get the job done because everybody else behind you is vomiting or at least holding your nose and now their oxygen uptake is inhibited. Garlic extract is believed to support cardiovascular health by promoting healthy blood pressure, reducing LDL, cholesterol levels, and improving blood circulation. Again, garlic extract contains a sulfur compound known as allicin, which has potent antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties. And for the guys that are considering about carnitine, which is mentioned a little bit later, Allicin can also inhibit TMA formation in the intestinal tract. Now, TMA is formed from carnitine and choline by certain bacteria, and then ultimately converts into TMAO within the liver. And TMAO is what can induce cardiovascular disease and systemic inflammation with chronic exposure. So if you're going with oral carnitine, because you don't want to inject anything or you're limited by the contents of this video, and you're worried about TMAO formation, causing all kinds of deleterious health effects, then garlic extract supplementation or allicin supplementation might be something you can look into. Garlic extract might also help to improve blood flow by enhancing the production of nitric oxide. So if you're thinking about supplementing, well, let's be honest, it's called megadosing. Megadosing L-citrulline malate into the multitude of grams, maybe a combination of garlic extract and a very high dose of L-citrulline might be beneficial to improve overall nitric oxide production and help with blood pressure management and the excretion of lactic acid and other metabolic waste products. Let's move over to optimizing skeletal muscle function. We got boosting testosterone. We got all of the micronutrients in place to increase hematocrit and red blood cell production. We got our heart function covered. Now let's improve the overall skeletal muscle function, because that's ultimately how we're going to win this endurance contest.